The town awakened with life, a rhythm all its own. White buildings gleamed in the golden sun, their sharp edges reflecting the brilliance of wealth. Markets buzz with voices, hawkers shouting, children laughing, women bargaining over vegetables, spices, and handcrafted goods. Luxury cars glided past street vendors whose hands bore the marks of years of labor. The air smelled of roasted maize and fresh paint, a collision of tradition and modernity. Every passerby carried a story, some whispered of ambition, some of poverty, and some of pride clinging to heritage. Among the city's many lives, a young billionaire walked unseen, dressed simply, hiding the weight of his immense wealth beneath a plain shirt and trousers. His eyes traced the streets, not with superiority, but with curiosity, observing the pulse of ordinary life. He noticed mothers balancing children in baskets, men debating over trivial arguments, and elders seated in the shade, their voices weaving cautionary tales for those willing to listen. At the center of this story stood a home that mirrored the town's contrasts. Inside, Mama Kesa, the matriarch, sat with a posture of authority, her eyes sharp as hawks surveying her household. Her wrinkles were maps of wisdom, each line a story of obedience, respect, and tradition. Opposite her, her daughter-in-law, stylish and confident, moved with modern grace, yet her gestures carried subtle tension, a simmering resentment waiting to flare. The young billionaire observed quietly, noting the sharp glances exchanged and the unsaid words that hung like storms in the air. Pride and jealousy clashed beneath the surface. Small misunderstandings whispered like secrets in a sacred grove. He felt the weight of family expectations pressing upon him from both sides, and yet he remained silent, absorbing the rhythms of his own home as the town's life outside continued unabated. A rooster crowed from a distant rooftop, mingling with the sounds of honking horns and market chatter. The city itself seemed to watch, alive with anticipation. Every gesture, every glance, was a note in the melody of tension, a story waiting to unfold. Here, wealth and tradition collided, pride and humility danced, and the young billionaire understood that the true challenge would not come from business deals or wealth, but from the hearts within his own home. And so in that moment, the town and the household breathed together, a living tableau of contrasts, where modernity met tradition, and where unseen forces of pride, respect, and morality began their quiet, dramatic weaving. The town of Nzuri thrummed with life, a pulse that could be felt in every footstep and heard in every shouted greeting. White buildings rose like pillars of ambition, their polished walls reflecting the blazing sun. Yet their feet, the streets teemed with the rhythm of ordinary lives. Vendors called out their wares, their voices weaving with the laughter of children chasing one another between stalls stacked with colorful fabrics, ripe fruits, and handmade trinkets. The smell of roasted maize mingled with the scent of fresh paint from the newly constructed towers. Luxury cars glided past humble carts and street vendors with quiet elegance, their polished chrome catching the sun like fleeting dreams of wealth. The contrast of fortune and humility was stark, almost poetic, each corner of the town a story waiting to unfold. Amid this vibrant chaos walked the young billionaire, Kofi Oba, a man known across the city for his vast wealth and shrewd mind. Today, however, he walked unseen, disguised in simple clothes, a plain shirt and trousers that concealed the power he carried in his name. His hair, neatly combed, and his shoes polished but humble, spoke of a man trying to observe life through the lens of ordinary eyes. Every gesture he made, from the tilt of his head to the careful step on cracked pavement, was measured yet full of purpose. Kofi's eyes, dark and intelligent, scanned the streets, not with superiority, but with curiosity. He watched mothers balancing children in baskets, men engaged in heated discussions over small trades, and elders seated in the shade, their hands and faces etched with stories of discipline, wisdom, and tradition. In the midst of this lively town stood a home that mirrored its contrasts. White walls gleamed in the sun, yet within, the air was tense, heavy with the weight of unspoken words. Mama Kesa, the matriarch, sat in her armchair like a queen on her throne. Her back straight, eyes sharp and discerning, she carried the authority of generations. Each wrinkle on her face told a story of obedience, hardship, and the wisdom of knowing when to speak and when to command silence. She wore a dress of deep indigo, modest yet elegant, reflecting her adherence to tradition and the respect she commanded in both the family and the community. Opposite her, moving with the confidence of a woman who had carved her own path, was her daughter-in-law, Adana, stylish mid-20s. Her clothing was modern, her hair perfectly coiffed, and her steps precise. Yet beneath the polish of ambition was a simmering tension, a quiet resentment that had been growing like an unspoken storm. Her eyes would flick toward Mama Kesa, then away, lips pressed in a line, hands slightly trembling with unspent emotion. The room was thick with the clash of two worlds, the young modern woman with her vision of autonomy, and the elder with her unwavering adherence to tradition. Kofi entered, silently noting the space between the two women. His steps were careful, the soft echo of his shoes against the polished wooden floor a gentle announcement of presence without intrusion. He observed the subtle dance of glances and gestures, the silent war waged in expressions. Pride and jealousy flickered like shadows across their faces, unspoken yet undeniable. "Mother, I asked you to sit here," Kofi said gently, his voice a calm ripple against the tension. "Adana, please let us speak." His tone carried authority, yet humility, an echo of the respect he had for both women and for the traditions that shaped their lives. Mama Kesa's eyes narrowed, yet she inclined her head slightly, acknowledging her son. Adana's gaze shifted, a mixture of defiance and curiosity reflecting in her eyes. She adjusted the fabric of her dress and took a careful breath, aware that the young billionaire could see beyond appearances, into the heart of intentions. Kofi studied them both, seeing the struggle that wealth and modernity had introduced into his home. His mind, sharp from years of business dealings and the manipulation of markets, now wrestled with a more personal conflict. The balance of respect and love, the maintenance of family honor, and the mediation of unspoken grievances. The symbolism of this moment was not lost on him. The wealth that could move nations could not buy peace within these walls. Here, humility, wisdom, and patience would be the true currency. The air seemed to hum with anticipation, a silent chorus of the city itself bearing witness to the tension. From the bustling streets below came the distant laughter of children, the clatter of market activity, and the rhythmic honking of horns. Each sound was a reminder of the world outside, where life moved on, indifferent to personal grievances, yet echoing the same struggles that played out in the confines of his home. Kofi's gaze returned to Adana. "I understand your strength," he said softly, "and I respect your voice. But remember, the house stands only if its foundations are solid. Respect is the first brick." Adana's eyes flickered with recognition, and she let a subtle nod escape, her pride still intact but her heart touched. Mama Kesa watched silently, her hand tightening around the arm of her chair, as if weighing sincerity in Kofi's words against the many battles she had endured in life. The moment stretched, heavy with possibility and unspoken futures. The young billionaire, though powerful, understood that his greatest challenge was not managing wealth or enterprises, but navigating the human hearts that defined his home. Every gesture, every measured word, every patient pause was a thread in the tapestry of peace he hoped to weave between the two women who held the most sway over his happiness. Outside, the city continued its pulse, unaware of the delicate balance within this home. Yet in that balance, Kofi saw the collision of modernity and tradition, pride and humility, ambition and wisdom. And in the quiet moments between words, he glimpsed the possibility of harmony, a harmony built not with money, but with understanding, patience, and respect, the very values that African tales had long whispered across generations. The room settled, as though the house itself exhaled, and the three souls, bound by blood, tradition, and ambition, stood on the precipice of a story that would test love, morality, and loyalty. And thus, the first threads of tension, pride, and redemption were woven into the lives of the billionaire, his wife, and his mother, a tale that would echo long after the sun set over the bustling city of Nzuri. The morning sun bathed the town of Lumumba in a brilliant light, glinting off the whitewashed walls of buildings that stood like proud sentinels along the bustling streets. Markets buzzed with life, a chorus of voices calling out for trade, laughter spilling from children darted between stalls, and the scent of roasted peanuts, fresh bread, and fragrant spices weaving through the air. Luxury cars shimmered as they rolled past humble homes, their polished chrome catching the rays of the sun like fleeting symbols of dreams and aspirations. The town itself seemed alive, a living character, holding stories of ambition, tradition, struggle, and hope in every corner. Each passerby carried their own weight, some burdened by poverty, others cloaked in wealth, all moving within the same rhythmic heartbeat of this modern African town. Within this world moved Adana, a woman of striking presence. At 26, she embodied modern ambition and independence, every step confident and deliberate. Her hair, braided in intricate patterns, reflected a fusion of tradition and contemporary style, while her clothing, a sleek, tailored dress paired with delicate jewelry, spoke of the life she was building, one step removed from the old ways, yet still tethered to them by marriage and family. A smartwatch glinted on her wrist as she moved through the house, its subtle beeps reminding her of schedules, calls, and appointments, yet it could not mask the tension simmering beneath her composed exterior. From the moment she rose that morning, the household felt her presence like a charged current. She moved with precision, arranging breakfast for family, her fingers adjusting the placemats, her eyes flicking toward the elegant white walls that had years of tradition behind their gleam. Mama Kesa, the matriarch, observed her silently from the armchair near the sunlit window, her posture as upright and commanding as a baobab tree rooted in the earth. Every movement of the young wife was noted. The flick of her wrist, the tilt of her head, the proud carriage that seemed to declare, "I am modern, I am capable, I am my own woman." And yet, beneath that polish, subtle signs betrayed her unease, a tightened jaw when Mama Case's gaze lingered too long, a barely perceptible sigh as she set the breakfast dishes on the table, a fleeting glance toward the young billionaire, her husband, as if silently seeking validation. Kofi Oba, the young billionaire, entered the room with the quiet authority that wealth and wisdom afforded him. Even in his casual morning attire, a crisp white shirt with sleeves rolled neatly, dark trousers, and polished shoes that whispered sophistication without ostentation. He carried the weight of the household on his broad shoulders. He noticed the tension immediately, the silent battlefield unfolding between his wife and mother. Every family gathering, every shared meal, seemed to be charged with unspoken rules, pride, and expectations that tugged against one another. He understood that wealth could buy comfort, power could command attention, but neither could command the hearts and loyalty of those closest to him without patience, understanding, and respect. As Adana poured tea into delicate cups, her movements were precise, yet slightly mechanical, a reflection of the inner storm she fought to control. Her smartphone buzzed with notifications from work, a reminder of the life she had built outside this household, a life that often conflicted with the slow, measured rhythm of Mama Case's traditions. She paused, adjusting the bracelet on her wrist, feeling the slight weight of Mama Case's eyes upon her. The elder's stare was not harsh, but it was sharp enough to pierce through the layers of confidence Adana had built around herself. "Do you remember," Mama Case began, her voice low and steady, "that a house is not built with beauty alone, but with respect for those who uphold its foundation?" Adana's fingers trembled slightly, betraying a flicker of frustration. She met Mama Case's gaze, a mixture of pride and defiance in her eyes, but she said nothing. Instead, she moved with careful grace, carrying the tea to the table, setting it down with a soft clink that echoed through the room like a subtle declaration of independence. Kofi watched, noting the tension, yet also the care with which she performed her duties. He understood that ambition and pride often masked vulnerability, and that beneath Adana's polished exterior was a heart yearning for recognition, yet constrained by the traditional structures of family and respect. The room was alive with the small but significant gestures of life. Mama Case adjusted her chair, her hands creaking like the timber floors beneath them, a subtle warning that she would not bend easily. Adana placed a napkin neatly on the table, then hesitated, fingers brushing over the delicate embroidery, a momentary lapse in her mechanical precision that betrayed both thoughtfulness and inner conflict. Kofi cleared his throat softly, drawing their attention. "Adana," he said gently, "your strength is clear, but remember, true strength honors the foundation it stands upon." His words hung in the air, like the scent of roasted maize drifting from the streets outside, subtle, pervasive, and impossible to ignore. Adana's lips pressed into a thin line, and she met her husband's eyes, seeing not judgment but understanding. It was a recognition of the struggle she carried, balancing ambition, independence, and respect within the confines of a household shaped by generations of tradition. Mama Kesa, though unyielding, softened slightly, her fingers tracing the edges of her chair as if measuring the sincerity in her daughter-in-law's heart. Outside, the city continued its eternal pulse. Children ran along the sunlit streets, the laughter of vendors and the hum of engines blending into a symphony of ordinary life. The contrast of wealth and tradition mirrored the household within. Luxury cars gliding past humble carts, modern ambition colliding with ancient wisdom, all coexisting in a fragile balance. Within the walls of the White House, the same balance was tested. In every glance, every gesture, and every word left unspoken, Kofi's eyes returned to Adana. He could see the pride and ambition in her movements, but he also saw the vulnerability that lay beneath, the desire to be acknowledged and understood. He knew that the path to harmony would require patience, dialogue, and a willingness to see beyond appearances. The heart, he whispered softly, is the true measure of wealth. Respect it, and you will know power beyond money. Adana exhaled quietly, a small shift in posture that suggested the beginning of understanding, if not complete agreement. Mama Kesa's gaze softened as well, the weight of tradition meeting the resilience of modernity in a moment that was both tense and tender. In this room, the story of family ambition and respect began to unfold, threads of pride, love, and conflict weaving a tapestry that would test the bonds between mother, wife, and husband, a tapestry that would echo with the lessons of African tales for generations to come. And so, the morning stretched into a quiet rhythm. The bustling town outside carried on, oblivious to the subtle but profound negotiations happening within the walls of the White House. Every gesture, every glance, every measured step within that room was symbolic, a foreshadowing of the conflicts and reconciliations to come. Ambition, tradition, respect, and love collided here, setting the stage for a story that would challenge hearts, test morality, and reveal the enduring power of patience and understanding the life of the young billionaire, his ambitious wife, and the matriarch who refused to yield her wisdom. The town of Lumumba awoke under a radiant sun, white buildings gleaming like polished stones along streets that pulsed with life. Markets overflowed with color and noise, stalls laden with woven baskets, ripe fruits, and steaming dishes, children darting between legs, vendors calling out their wares in melodic shouts that danced across the cobblestones. Amidst this vibrant chaos, the hum of modernity thrummed. Luxury cars glided past humble homes, their polished surfaces reflecting both wealth and aspiration, while scooters and rickety bicycles carried workers and students weaving through the labyrinth of narrow streets. The town itself seemed alive, a character with moods and stories, holding secrets of pride, struggle, and hope in every corner. Here, the past and the present met in silent dialogue, the traditions of ancestors brushing against the ambitions of modern life, sometimes clashing, sometimes blending in a tapestry of resilience. Within the heart of this living town stood the white stone mansion of Kofi Oba, a structure that mirrored the duality of its owner. Kofi, a young billionaire in his early 30s, entered the house quietly, his polished shoes silent on the marble floor. Wealth wrapped around him like a cloak, but it did not define his heart. His eyes, sharp and observant, scanned the household with a mixture of curiosity and concern. He had built empires and amassed riches, yet it was the subtle interactions with his family that demanded his attention now. He noticed immediately the tension lingering in the air, a tension that vibrated around every piece of furniture, every gleaming surface, every movement of those within the home. Mama Kesa, the matriarch, sat near the large sunlit window in her high-backed wooden chair. She was small in stature, yet her presence filled the room like the shadow of an ancient baobab tree. Her skin, lined with years of experience and wisdom, glowed softly in the morning light, each wrinkle telling stories of sacrifices, decisions, and lessons that had been carved into the very essence of her being. She wore a traditional wrapper, colors vibrant and commanding attention, and her hair, pulled neatly into a bun, spoke of dignity and discipline. Every movement was deliberate. When she shifted her gaze, it carried the weight of generations. She did not raise her voice, yet her words resonated like drums echoing across a valley. Respect, she would say, is earned through patient service and honor. Forget this, and a house falls even with the strongest walls. Adana, the young wife, moved through the room with the elegance of modernity, her dress sleek, fitted, and bright against the austere backdrop of tradition. Her phone vibrated softly in her pocket, a reminder of deadlines and a life outside the rigid walls she now inhabited. Her eyes flicked toward Mama Kesa as she arranged breakfast, each gesture precise, almost ritualistic, yet tinged with a tension she could not hide. Pride sat behind her careful composure, a shield against the scrutiny of the matriarch. She hummed softly, an attempt to keep her own rhythm amid the household's strict tempo, yet every hum seemed to clash with the measured silence of Mama Kesa's watchful eyes. The subtle tension between them unfolded like a slow-burning fire. Mama Kesa's gaze lingered on Adana's movements, measuring the slight tilt of her wrist as she poured tea, the way she adjusted the napkins, the careful precision with which she carried plates to the table. Each act, ordinary to an unobservant eye, became a test of respect and humility under Mama Kesa's silent scrutiny. Adana's fingers trembled slightly as she set down a plate. She caught the stern, calculating glance from her mother-in-law and stiffened, the weight of expectation pressing down on her like the heavy monsoon clouds before a storm. Kofi, observing silently, saw the unspoken battlefield. He understood that wealth could command respect outwardly, but inside the walls of family, it was wisdom, patience, and humility that governed allegiance. He noted how Adana's pride clashed with Mama Kesa's authority, like two rivers meeting, one swift and bright, the other deep and steady, neither willing to yield. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried calm authority, yet was gentle enough to invite reflection rather than fear. "Adana," he said softly, "strength is admirable, but remember, the tree grows taller when its roots are nourished. Do not sever the roots, for they will bear your weight when storms come." Mama Kesa's hands rested lightly on her cane, the wooden staff polished smooth from years of guidance. She inclined her head slightly, acknowledging her son's words without relinquishing her own authority. "True," she said, her voice low, deliberate. "But a tree cannot grow straight if its branches ignore the sun and soil. Remember your place, Adana, and learn the ways that have guided this house for generations." Her words were more than caution. They were the drumbeats of tradition, signaling the rhythm that governed family, respect, and the unbroken line of elders. Adana met her gaze, lips pressed in a thin line, pride dancing with uncertainty in her eyes. She carried the tension of modern ambition, yet in that gaze one could glimpse the flickers of understanding, a recognition that authority rooted in tradition was not meant to crush, but to guide. Every careful movement, every measured step within a household became a negotiation between past and future, between pride and humility, between ambition and respect. Outside, the town carried on, unaware of the quiet war inside the walls. The laughter of children, the calls of market vendors, the hum of engines, and the glint of sunlight off white buildings formed a backdrop that contrasted sharply with the stillness and weight of the home's interior. Kofi's eyes traced the delicate dance of interactions, the matriarch's unwavering vigilance, the young wife's struggle to assert herself while maintaining dignity, and his own silent role as mediator and observer. In this space, the story of family, power, and tradition began to unravel, threading through pride, respect, and subtle gestures of control. A hand resting on a teacup, a head tilted in acknowledgement, the careful placement of objects, all became symbolic, each telling a tale of loyalty, ambition, and the balance between modern life and ancestral wisdom. The tension was palpable yet unspoken, a storm gathering quietly beneath the calm surface, foreshadowing the trials and reconciliations that would define the bonds of the Oba family. Kofi's final observation of the morning revealed the moral at the heart of the household. Authority must be respected. Ambition must be tempered with humility, and the strength of a home lies not in wealth or appearance, but in the careful dance of love, respect, and understanding. The silent exchanges, the subtle nods, and the measured steps of each character built a narrative rich with cultural resonance, one that would ripple through the family's legacy like the steady drumbeat of African tales, echoing lessons of patience, obedience, and the quiet power of wisdom. The sun cast its golden light over the town of Lumumba, illuminating the white buildings that gleamed like polished stones against the azure sky. Markets below buzzed with life. the calls of vendors carrying produce and handmade crafts weaving into the rhythm of the streets, children darting between legs, chasing shadows and dreams alike. Luxury cars glided past wooden carts, the hum of engines mingling with the clatter of bicycle bells, and the chatter of townspeople rose like a song woven from ambition and survival. In this vibrant tableau, contrasts were everywhere. Modern wealth brushing against humble tradition, sleek glass facades standing above mud-walled shops, and the rhythm of a bustling town pressing against the quiet of family homes. Inside one such home, a house of white stone and polished wood, the tension simmered like embers beneath a fire. Kofi Oba, the young billionaire, stood by the grand window, observing both the town and the household with quiet intent. His tailored jacket hinted at wealth, yet it was a gentleness in his eyes that revealed the depth of his character. He had conquered empires and amassed riches beyond imagination, but it was the heart of his family that now demanded his attention. His gaze shifted subtly, measuring every glance and gesture, absorbing the undercurrent of emotion that his wealth could neither buy nor command. Mama Kesa, the matriarch, sat in her customary chair near the dining table. Her presence was both commanding and serene, a pillar rooted in tradition. Every wrinkle on her face spoke of years of wisdom, sacrifice, and vigilance. The bright fabric of her wrapper shimmered as she moved, yet her movements were deliberate, measured, like a drumbeat signaling the unspoken rules of the household. Respect, she often said, is not demanded by force, but by example and reverence of the past. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, tracked the movements of Adana, the young wife, with the precision of a hunter studying prey. Adana moved through the room with sleek grace, the modernity of her attire, a fitted blouse, designer skirt, and polished shoes, contrasting sharply with the earthy tones of Mama Case's traditional wrapper. Each movement was careful, deliberate, yet carried a tension born from the unspoken struggle of asserting herself within a household bound by tradition. She hummed lightly as she set down breakfast plates, a rhythm meant to ease her own heart against the weight of scrutiny. But her eyes flicked toward Mama Kesa, catching the measured, disapproving gaze, and her hands trembled ever so slightly as she adjusted a napkin. A simmering tension filled the air, subtle yet powerful, as small arguments and unspoken grievances threaded their way through the morning. Mama Case's lips pressed into a thin line as she remarked quietly, "A house is only as strong as the respect its daughters-in-law show." Adana's reply was soft, almost swallowed by the clatter of spoons and distant traffic. "I only wish to help, Mother." But the words carried a sharpness beneath their surface, a hint of pride and independence that clashed with the matriarch's expectations. Kofi observed silently, torn between his love and respect for both women. He knew the patience of his mother was unmatched, yet he also saw the ambition and fire in his wife, qualities that could both strengthen and disrupt the household. He leaned against the window, the sunlight glinting on the cuff of his sleeve, and whispered softly to himself, "How does one balance the roots and the branches when both are so vital?" The silence of his question echoed across the room, unheard by those below, yet heavy in his heart. The tension extended beyond the walls of the home. Through the open windows, the sounds of the town mirrored the household's emotional distance. Children's laughter rang in contrast to the quiet tension at the table. Vendors shouted their wares, oblivious of the subtle power struggles unfolding above. Even the busy street, with gliding cars and hurrying pedestrians, seemed to mock the stillness inside, the contrast between external energy and internal restraint reflecting the delicate balance Kofi sought to maintain. Subtle misunderstandings weaved themselves into the morning. A raised eyebrow here, a sigh there, a glance at a phone or a cup of tea, all became symbols of pride, jealousy, and simmering frustration. Adana poured tea with precision, yet Mama Case's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, reading emotions as both defiance and carelessness. "Your hand shakes, Adana," the elder remarked, her tone calm yet piercing. "Do not let pride blind your heart to the ways of this house." Adana's fingers clenched around a teacup, knuckles pale against the delicate porcelain. "I am learning, Mother," she whispered, though her words carried both submission and stubbornness. Kofi's thoughts traced the emotional distance between them, noting how wealth and status could command respect outwardly, but in the intimate space of family, humility and understanding were the only currency that mattered. He watched how small gestures, placing a plate, adjusting a chair, lowering one's gaze, became loaded with meaning, shaping the invisible architecture of household power. Even the placement of objects in the room spoke volumes. Polished wood and gleaming silver juxtaposed against humble woven mats, signaling the coexistence of modernity and tradition. The mornings stretched, each silent exchange deepening the unspoken tension. The young billionaire's heart ached at the subtle fractures forming between the people he loved most. The house itself seemed to hold its breath, aware that these small grievances, if left unchecked, could escalate into conflict that might reshape the family. Yet Kofi also recognized the beauty in these moments, the lessons being silently imparted, the resilience being tested, and the opportunity for understanding to emerge. At last he spoke, his voice soft but deliberate, carrying the weight of observation and concern. We are bound by blood, by love, and by the history of those who came before us. Let us not forget that the strength of this family is not in wealth, nor in pride, but in the respect we show one another. Mama Kesa inclined her head slightly, acknowledging her son's wisdom, while Dana's shoulders loosened, a flicker of understanding softening her gaze. Though the tension remained, a fragile bridge had been extended, a quiet reminder that even in conflict, there is room for guidance, growth, and the intertwining of hearts through patience, humility, and the enduring rhythms of African tradition. Outside, the town of Lumumba thrived, its streets alive with stories of struggle, ambition, and hope. Inside, the Oba household navigated quiet storms of pride and expectation, each gesture, glance, and word charged with meaning. The subtle interplay of authority, ambition, and love foreshadowed the trials to come, promising that the coming days would test loyalties, challenge values, and ultimately reveal the strength of respect, tradition, and the enduring bonds of family.